So you got money stuck in South Africa, and how do you get it out to New Zealand, to USA, to all these different places? So I interview a shareholder from Rand Rescue, where basically they do that for a living. They do it all for you because apparently it's quite hard. You got to try and call this bank, and you got to go over there to get a bank account. And then you're waiting 2 months just to get that bank account, and hopefully they turn up for a meeting because you know how the government is. So yeah, if you want to get your Rand or whatever it's called from South Africa, this is how you do it. And we go into it for the next 60 minutes explaining exactly what you need to do, what to think about, and how it works. Apparently, trying to get money from South Africa to New Zealand or to different places is a little bit hard. So, how does it actually work? If I'm South African and I just moved somewhere, how do I get my money?
Well, it's quite easy. You've got two options. You've always got the commercial banks in South Africa, the well-known establishments that can transfer the funds for you, or you can use intermediaries like ourselves that can assist with it. And the benefit with using companies like a company like us is we've got staff members based all over the world. We've got branches in America, Canada, Australia, the UK, in Europe as well. And you talk to people in your timeline, your time zone, to transfer the funds for you. Where if you deal with the bigger commercial banks in South Africa, you've got to wait for the night time to talk to them, and you always end up in a call center, which is sometimes difficult, especially if you call from overseas. The biggest issue is when you talk to a consultant in the call center, there might be a chance that the call can get dropped. And when you reconnect and call them again, you end up with someone else. And that's the troubles. Then you need to tell them your whole story again, what you want to do, what's your objective. And if you're lucky, then you can transfer the funds over.
So I'd be curious if it's similar to the UK pension transfer, because that was a nightmare. Like I remember trying to get clients' funds from the UK over to New Zealand, and there was some sort of scam issue they had over there, so they weren't very forthcoming in letting you get your money. Like you had to prove that you're a real human, and then you try and call them, and then they delay it, and then it takes 2 years just to do a simple transaction. Like I think that was the PB. It took a year and a half to get
Yeah.
their money that they requested for the information with signature, with IDs and all that, and they said no. So what actually shouldn't it just be like you push a button and now you got money, or why is it hard?
Look, at the end of the day, unfortunately, there is scam artists and con artists all over the world, and they are darn good at what they're doing. And to prevent that, obviously, you need to identify the person firstly, that the policy holder, that is the person that you are talking to. You need to, like I say, there's so many security measures that needs to be put in place to make sure that you are paying the funds of the policyholder to them in the new country where they are based in. And once you've put parameters in to secure the communication, it's sometimes tough. And like I said, the scam artists and the guys are so clever; they get ways to work around, and it's just getting harder and harder and tougher to identify the people when they're still living abroad. And that goes down to there's so many different pension funds or funds in South Africa. I don't know how the UK pension funds work, but in South Africa you get preservation funds, you get pension funds, you get retirement annuities, you get living annuities, and all those funds got separate rules how to surrender or repatriate those funds. And every time when we engage with a client, we have to look at the rules of the policies first, and then set up the parameters or the processes for them to transfer the funds over. And once the client are happy with the process, are going to go forward, then we need to engage with them, set up bank accounts, and then again, lock in those accounts to make sure that the account that's opened must be in the client's name. And then the account the proceeds goes to is the account holder's name again in the country abroad. And that's quite, how can I say, daunting to work with clients' funds, because you need to make sure that all your security measures are in place.
Yeah, you got to do the money laundering and politically exposed people and stuff. You can debank people now. It's kind of crazy. There's a whole institution that if they don't like someone, they can debank them because they have such large influence. But anyway, so what are the funds actually stuck in South Africa? Is it like pensions? Is it bank accounts? Is it what kind of money are they trying to get over, and what is it? You know what I mean?
So obviously you start off with savings. Then there's proceeds from selling your property, funds that's locked into trust accounts, and then your pension funds. Like I've mentioned, there's different pension or different funds like pension funds, preservation funds, living annuities, and retirement annuities. And some of the rules around those funds, some of them are locked in, where you can transfer some of the funds within, let's say, 6 to 8 weeks. If you go down to, if you look at retirement annuities, then you've got to be, there's a period that you have to be out of South Africa for 3 years. Only if you can show evidence that you've been out of the country for that period of 3 years, then you can access your retirement annuities. And then lastly is you've got a living annuity, where if you access your pension fund and you withdraw 1/3 of those funds tax free, if that 1/3 is below 550,000 rand, you can then surrender that portion tax free, and then the other 2/3 needs to be locked into an annuity which is called a living annuity, and from that you can withdraw a monthly income. And yes, you can do drawdowns up to 17.5% per annum. And if that fund is below the threshold of 128,000 rand, 125,000 rand, then you can withdraw the remainder of the fund. But if it's below, if it's still higher than 125,000 rand, you can't withdraw that fund in totality.
Interesting. Makes sense. Similar to UK pension, like you create this incentive to encourage people to save into this thing, and we don't want you to take that money out of the country, so we're going to have some sort of tax on it. And depending on how quick you are with that, whether it's within 4 years or after 4 years, and then also the accessibility of it, like that it's for retirement. We don't want you just taking it out and spending it all on black. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what's that process like? So if you want to transfer, can you explain? And you don't have to go in depth on what an annuity is, but what do you actually mean when you say annuity? Because that's not common words that people use,
Yep. So it's basically a pension fund, and again, it's you as a client. You can determine how you want to invest your funds in South Africa. And yeah, the process can take anything from 4 months to maybe 8 months. It all depends on your tax status in South Africa. So to start off the process, once a client engaged with us, you need to get the client compliant with SARS, and that is the tax entity in South Africa, the South African Revenue of Tax. And to go through that process, you need to change your tax status. You need to apply for it's called an AIT PIN. It's allowance for international transfers. So once those two criteria has been ticked off with SARS, then and a specific account needs to be opened for you. It's called a non-resident bank account. And once the account is verified and approved, that information will be sent over to the insurance company that holds your funds, and then they will release the funds, the portion that needs to go to SARS, the taxable portion, and then the second portion, which is then owed to you, that will get transferred into your non-res bank account. And once the funds are in your account, then that will be then transferred to your account abroad. And like I said, that process, and also all depends on your tax status. So some people think the moment when you get on the plane and you leave the country, that SARS will forget about you, but you still need to update your SARS status every year. You need to file your returns and keep your SARS status up to date.
So I guess if you're gone for a few years and you weren't doing that, and now you're trying to get your pension out, they're going to be like, oh, well, there's all this tax you were meant to pay us and you didn't file.
Correct. Even if it's a zero return, you still need to file that return with them to make sure that you're still compliant with them.
And yeah, wow, setting up a non-resident account from a different country would be a bit of an art. Like, how do you even do that? So you just call them up, hey, I'm a non-resident, hook us up. Or do you have to fly there? Like, how do you even do that part?
And again, that's part of why people are accessing services like Rand Rescue. Is yes, you can do it by yourself, but then you need to get on the plane, fly over to South Africa, set up an appointment with SARS. To set up the appointment, it can take up to 7 days to have a voice appointment with them, a voice call appointment. And if you can't resolve the issue via the phone, then you need to make an appointment where you go into SARS to sit down with them to discuss what your plan of action is. And yes, that process can take up to 2 months if you're lucky. And I think no one's got that amount of funds to take 2 months leave where they work, wherever they work in the world, and to go sit with the tax revenue services in South Africa and just to sort out that issue.
That's why. So you got to fly there to take a call.
Yeah, exactly.
And then hopefully they have time for you, and then you're just in there for 2 months, and they might not make a decision. Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Wow. So then with you guys, is it just because you're like a accredited a person confirmer? You're like, hey, I see this human being, they're real, give them an account. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's why we've got a licensed intermediary in South Africa. We've got tax practitioners, we've got staff members in South Africa that basically takes charge of the whole process for you. And everything needs to run parallel with each other, and you need to make sure that you hit the timelines. And it's a lot of paperwork. South Africa is still very paperwork driven. And that's the one issue where some people in South Africa work night shifts, other work normal hours, and it's tough to get all that paperwork together and send it off. And communication is key here. If the staff members send you a request or they need information, they sometimes need to have a respond within 24 hours. And yeah, that's the one fail is communication.
Random. That's tough. And with the transferring the pension, do you have to have like a qualifying entity? So with the UK pension, the remaining balance had to go into something that's approved.
No.
Okay, so you can, what happens to the money that's left? Does it just stay over South Africa?
No, so you can surrender the full fund, every cent that's in the fund, and that will get transferred to your bank account in the country where you live. And then it's up to you to talk to a licensed advisor to reinvest the funds in the country where you live.
But you don't have to reinvest it, do you? You can just take it.
You don't have to reinvest it now.
Random. That's unique to them. Because like Australia, you can chuck in KiwiSave, you can chuck in Australian Super, UK pension. You can get some money, but usually you have to leave it in there and let it grow. Random. Why? What's that about? Do you know? Why don't they keep it in there? Yeah,
it's up to you. And again, if you look at a living annuity where you've got an option of taking out one third of the funds, take it out cash, and then the other 2/3 will then be reinvested in the living annuity, and that will generate an income for you. So for people that's at retirement age, that just makes sense, but only sense if you were still back in South Africa. Then you generate your own income from the funds that you've invested over X amount of years. But if you live abroad, it just doesn't make sense to get that small investment because, yes, in South Africa, in rands, it makes sense. But if you live overseas, let's take, for example, if your investment pays out 20,000 Rand a month and you live in a country like, let's say, New Zealand, that 20,000 Rand is going to get divided with the exchange rate divided by, let's say, 11.5. And that's what you're going to live on or live off in New Zealand, which is not a lot of money.
Just savage, eh? Yeah, because I mean, in our world, insurance side of things, like South Africans are ideal because they're motivated, but they don't have much money, so they need to cover the gap while they're here. What do you,
Yeah.
when you migrate from South Africa, what should you think about in terms of setting things up smartly? What's best practice? Either with transferring the funds, should you do it sooner rather than later? Does that not matter? And then what should you think about when you're setting up your new life here?
Well, as a how can I say, as a school leaver in South Africa, the first thing your parent actually force down your throat is that you need to have a fund that caters for the day when you retire. So South Africans are every South African's got a proper pension fund or some sort of fund for retirement age in South Africa, and no one plans to immigrate. But if you do immigrate, which is important, is you need to get to your new country, look at investment opportunities, and something similar that's going to give you the same frame of peace of mind that when you retire, that you will be well looked after with the money that you earn and also the money that you had in South Africa. With immigration that's so expensive, some of the people borrow money to immigrate, and once they release their policy funds, they use some of the funds to cover their debt. Other people bring their money over, and in South Africa, on paper, you're a millionaire. But once you immigrate, you're not a millionaire anymore, because you divide your funds with either 11, 12. If you immigrate to the UK, you divide your funds by 22, which is not a lot of money. But yeah, it's very tough to immigrate, and to bring your money over, you need to work smart with your money. To make sure that whatever you bring over, that is going to work for you when you retire. And if I look at the age, the average age where people immigrate now to New Zealand, it's anything from 35 to 45. And it makes sense. Your retirement money in South Africa makes sense when you hit retirement age 55 or 65. But in your new country, it doesn't make sense.
And is that quite a cultural difference? Because a lot of people don't really think about retirement. They're quite government reliant, put it that way. At least that's my experience when I was a retirement planner. So is it quite common that a lot of South Africans will have a pension, and is it because there's no support when you retire and you're just cooked? Is that why are they so motivated?
Correct, yes. Yeah, you need to look after yourself.
Oh, jeez. Wait, what, just to educate us Kiwis, what is life like? So is the public health system good? Is there any support? What's South Africa got going for it, and is also a work and improvement?
Yeah, look, unfortunately with South Africa, it's a country of natural beauty, and if you look at the variety of animals walking around in South Africa, you don't get it in or anywhere in the world, and not just in South Africa, in Africa as a whole. If you want to go on a holiday, you've got the option of, like in New Zealand, you can go to the beach, jump on a boat, do proper fishing. But South Africa gives you the bushveld where you actually switch off, and there's nothing more soothing to the soul than nature itself. And I always use the example where you build a big bonfire, you sit around the bonfire with family or friends, and you hear the jackals and the hyenas and all the wildlife around you, and you don't know what's going on. If you're in a Kruger National Park, there can be a pride of lions 5 kilometers away from you, but the noise they make, it's so the trembles that come out of you, it feels like they sit next to you, if it makes sense. It's just unbelievable. But bringing our kids to New Zealand, the freedom the kids got, jumping on a bus, public transport, the freedom of moving around, that's something that you don't have in South Africa. Safety-wise, it just opens so much more. And that's why we just fell in love with New Zealand. And it's amazing what the kids, what access the kids got in New Zealand versus South Africa, where in South Africa, I went there last year, and I got to be careful with what I'm saying is, it was so tough, knowing, or my friends telling me that you need to, when you visit someone, you need to be home before 10 o'clock at night, because you don't know if there's going to be something called load shedding, that all the power is off, that you basically drive in the streets and there's no street lights, there's no traffic lights, nothing is working. And in that total darkness, there's people roaming around that wants to steal your car and harm you to get something. But again, in daytime, I mean, South Africa is a beautiful country, and the people is just so giving. It's like two different worlds.
What, so they're turning off the streetlights and traffic on? So what do you mean? They just can't afford the power bill? Why are they turning it off?
Yeah, so I mean, the power grid in South Africa has never been maintained properly, and with all the development in South Africa, it's just crazy, and the grid can't keep up with the demand, and so they have to share the demand within different towns and cities, and you actually work off a schedule where the government or the municipality will send you a schedule and say, hey guys, the power will be off on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever, from this specific time to that specific time. And I remember just before we came over, I mean, we still had a little daughter, and I just think of people with babies. They need to heat up their formula milk, and they just couldn't do it using electricity, and you need to adapt, and then you need to get gas appliances and so forth. And yeah, it's a struggle.
Probably great for your sleep though, eh? You know, having artificial light after 10, so everyone's waking up at the crack of dawn at this. Can't believe you said lions nearby was relaxing, being one with nature. That's fair enough. Are they scared of the bonfire? Like, will many animals stay away from the fire? Is that like a safety thing you do, or just you like the community of it? Or
No, so if you travel in the bush, where you live, it's normally gated, and it's got fencing around it, so the animals don't tend or don't have access to the campgrounds where you live. So you can jump in your car, go through the gates, and you can basically roam around in Mother Nature, untouched, where you can see lions lying, and nature just taking its course. But when you enter the gate again, you're like in a safe zone. And yeah, there is the odd leopard that jumps the fence, and there is park rangers that protect the people, and obviously in massively numbers, a leopard won't attack a lot of people that's together. But yeah, I don't think there's ever been any major accidents or incidents in campgrounds.
interesting, yeah. Because I used to be a kayak guide, and they taught us when we're trying to find dolphins and whales, and they tell us that you got to group together, not space out, so the dolphin doesn't think you're hunting them.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that there's safety in numbers against a leopard, unless you got a little kid, but it'll just be like, oh god. Anyways, all right. Well, we're conscious of your efficient schedule. Well, I'd just be curious, actually. So you've got all these different key stakeholders and staff members in all these different time zones. What have you tried in terms of managing and leading and supporting people through that? And what hasn't worked and what has worked? So if you want to do an international company, what's your top tips?
Well, I mean, you need to have people that you can trust, obviously. And also, it's not something that you can join a company, pick up the reins and start communicating with guys, and start, how can I say, transact money. It's all about trust. You need to build relationships. If I look at my colleagues in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, the majority of them have experiences 10 years and longer. And if there's new people that start up in the business, obviously the South African community won't just follow you and trust you. It's got to be referral based or word of mouth, and said, yes, I did work with this person or dealt with this company, and the outcome was great. So yeah, it's all about trust and just having a brand that's out there that's older than a couple of years.
And how do you hire? Like, how do you think about, okay, we got to get someone in America, we got to get someone in Papua New Guinea or whatever, and then you put an ad up, or like you ask a mate, like, what do you do?
Well, luckily for us, the majority of the people in the company are ex-clients. So they went through the process and they've put their hand up and said, hey, I'm either doing nothing or need to generate an additional income. Is it something that I can be part of? And yeah, that's just how it worked out for us. I did see in the past where we've engaged with people that's got that has got no background with it. It takes a lot longer to start up. And at the end of the day, it's all about, like I said, trust in the pipeline that you need to build. And once you've got those in place, then yeah, it's just a rollover effect.
Interesting. So what's like the bottleneck? Is it staff? Is it getting new clients? Is it delivering on the clients? What's the hardest thing about this type of business?
Well, obviously, it's marketing, sales, generating sales, putting your name out there. Um, there's no easy way to get the funds out of South Africa. There's one way, one process, and you need to tick all the boxes. So if a new company comes and said, "Hey, we can do X, Y, and Z for you within 2 weeks," it's not the case. There's the process is the process, and every client's got every client's got a unique case. Not everyone's the same. Not everyone's got money invested in the same fund. And if you've got someone that's got money invested in the same fund, we need to go again, look at your stars profile to see if that's everything in line with the process. So everyone, it's got to be handled case by case, if I can put it that way. And it's unique. So at the end of the day, it's all about marketing, word of mouth, and then also Google reviews. People boosting you on Google, saying we've dealt with the company and it was either crap service or excellent service. And yes.
Do you have the most success with the people once they're landed, or do you do some work in priming them, like before they come, or convincing them to come to New Zealand? Because you're limited by the immigration. You know what I mean? Like you go talk to Tourism New Zealand. Hey, we need to do a few ads in fucking South Africa, get some boys and girls over here. Where are you finding the success?
Well, we do. We attend a lot of how can I say seminars in South Africa, and there's all different types of seminars. There's seminars where all the countries in the world come and market the country. And also there's seminars where recruiters or companies will go to South Africa to recruit specific people or for specific skills. And you tend to join those seminars beforehand. And when those people get a job and a visa, and they're on their way and they can still remember you, because that process can take 6 months up to a year. And if they remember you, then they engage with you, and yeah, you start the process there just to basically start the process to transfer their funds or the liquid cash they've got at that stage. And once they get into New Zealand, then you start the journey. Say, when you hit your 3-year period, then we can transfer your annuity or your retirement annuities. If you've got pension funds, if you've got preservation funds, we can start commuting those funds. So it's all about, again, communication and staying in touch.
Yeah, such a long pipeline. and then some things are outside of your control. You might identify the right person that wants to come, and then they get denied, or it's interesting. So just to wrap it up, conscious, you got to shoot out. So what's a good overview of what people should think about when deciding whether they're going to do it themselves or who the right person is to help them?
Well, I think it comes down to communication and time zone. Um, it's sometimes tough. Like I said, it depends also on what type of work industry you are in. There's a lot of hard laborers that work very long hours in the day, and when they get home, they just want to spend time with the family and then go to bed to rest up for the next day. So if you can be like myself in New Zealand, and two of my other BDMs that's in South Africa, you communicate with either the spouse, the partner, or maybe the person himself in the same time zone. It's just more relaxing. Whereas some of the other companies only they've got offices only in South Africa, and if after a long day's work you need to communicate with them at night time, and that can also be very stressful. So that's the one benefit of our company that I can put forward. And yeah, it all comes down to communication, I think.
Easy, done. Well, thanks for coming on.
No, all good. Thanks for you.
All right.